As Column just reported, our Catholic Vice President and Secretary of State met with Pope Leo last Monday. In those meetings, filled with first impressions, an exchange of gifts, and discussion about the Pope's hometown links to America, there was clearly some high-state conversation about world peace. The message that the Vatican might be willing to step forward to provide a venue for peace talks between Ukraine and Russia clearly made it back to the President of the United States. And by midweek, the Wall Street Journal quoted unnamed sources as saying peace talks will begin at the Vatican in mid-June.
I think it would be great to have it at the Vatican. Maybe it would have some extra significance. And I saw that it was discussed yesterday, so I thought, and people told me that they'd be honored to do it. I would imagine they would be. So, no, I think it would be maybe helpful. There's tremendous bitterness, anger, and I think maybe that could help some of that anger. So having it at the Vatican would be, in Rome, would be I think it would be a great idea.
During his first week as Pope, Leo told leaders of the Eastern churches, quote, "The Holy See is available so that enemies can meet and look each other in the eye." Hannah Brockhaus is senior Vatican correspondent for Catholic news agency. She joins us now from Rome. Hannah, what do we know for certain about Pope Leo XIV's offer to host peace talks at the Vatican?
Thanks, Catherine. What we know right now is that Pope Leo XIV has offered to host peace talks between Russia and Ukraine at the Vatican. We've heard that from several sources, and it's been confirmed even by the Secretary of State, Cardinal Pietro Parolin. Now, there are also reports from the Wall Street Journal and other places that those talks could happen in mid-June, but that isn't confirmed, and the foreign minister in Russia also said that maybe wasn't true, that was happening. So that we have conflicting reports about, but that the Vatican is willing and that Pope Leo has extended that invitation, we know for sure.
And Hannah, can you explain the shift in tone that Pope Leo has taken compared to Pope Francis when it comes to the war in Ukraine? And what kind of ripple effect does that have on the world stage?
So far with Pope Leo, I would say there has been a subtle shift. A lot of Ukrainians weren't very happy with Pope Francis's diplomatic approach when he would speak about the war. He avoided any strong language or saying that Russia was the aggressor in the conflict. Whereas Leo, while as Pope so far has not said something about Russia being an invader or aggressor, he did in 2022 talk about it as an imperialism, their attack on Ukraine. So that was one difference. And so far as well, the way he keeps repeating this refrain of a just and lasting peace, his outreach to Ukrainian President Zelensky, right away, a phone call very quickly after he was elected. These all seem to be an indication that he might be willing to take maybe a little bit of a stronger approach with Russia, whereas Francis was very, maybe a little more delicate because he was worried about closing off those doors. So what does that mean for the EU, especially? I think you already see a lot of leaders in the European Union rallying around with the Vatican's support to give even more support to Ukraine and to negotiations. And we could see if that has an effect. We don't know, but that will have an effect even on what President Trump decides to do. He's giving sort of mixed messages as well about his approach to Russia and Ukraine and the war. So what will he decide to do? Perhaps what Leo has done and said could have an impact.
Hannah, Pope Leo XIV's first words to the faithful when he was elected were, "Peace be with you." So outside of the Russia-Ukraine war, where else has this theme of peace come up in Pope Leo's first 2 weeks?
Yes, and I wanted to point out too that when he said, "Peace be with you all," he put those words in the mouth of Christ. He emphasized that those were Christ's words, and that has been a theme as well in this first few weeks of the pontificate of putting Christ at the center. Pope Leo has also spoken several times now about Gaza and the conflict there. In his first general audience this week, that was the main appeal to current events, I would say, outside of his normal spiritual message that he would always have. He also appealed for humanitarian aid to be allowed into Gaza, as well for an end to the conflict there. In a meeting earlier this week with religious leaders, he was very clear about the strong connection between Catholics and our Jewish brothers and sisters, and how important that is. So even on that side, while supporting Gaza, he was also very clear about the difficult times that Jewish people are going through, and supported them in that speech as well.
Hannah, in one of his first personnel appointments, Pope Leo named Cardinal Baldassare Reina as Grand Chancellor of the Pontifical Theological Institute John Paul II for Marriage and the Family Sciences, replacing Archbishop Vincenzo Paglia, who has faced criticism as the head of the JP2 Institute, from his hiring of controversial faculty to making remarks that sounded like he supported physician-assisted suicide. So, Hannah, what can we draw from this new appointment at the John Paul II Institute?
I think there are two things from this appointment by Pope Leo. So the first is just to remember that Archbishop Paglia had turned 80 recently. And according to the regulations, after their 80th birthday, usually they're replaced, not always immediately. This was a fairly quick replacement, I would say, but that is according to the regulation. The second would be that Cardinal Reina, as the Vicar General of Rome, so sort of the Pope's Pope is the Bishop of Rome, and the Vicar General would be his right-hand man, the one who kind of heads up the diocese, runs the diocese day to day. That role traditionally was connected to being the Grand Chancellor of this Institute for Marriage and Family Studies. So Pope Francis was the one who sort of broke with tradition when he named Paglia to lead it. And now we see a return with this choice by Pope Leo to say, okay, no, I'm going to reconnect this role, which, this institute is in the Pontifical Lateran University, which also has a lot of connections to the Diocese of Rome. So he's kind of bringing that all back together. Now, if Cardinal Reina will make changes to how things are going there, we'll have to see. His record in family issues is still a little bit unclear.
Hannah, we have less than a minute remaining, but how would you characterize Pope Leo's first 2 weeks as head of the Catholic Church? What's your top impression?
Something that has been standing out to me, especially in his most recent speeches, is this emphasis on how God's love reaches us first before we make a move to respond to it. I've noticed this theme just from his very first moments out on the balcony after his election, that this theme is running through, that this call we receive from God, his love, is something that then we respond to, even if we're far from the church, even if we're, needing to be converted.
And that's quite Augustinian of Pope Leo as well. Hannah Brockhaus, thank you so much for your reporting and for your time today.
Thanks, Catherine.